Hello everyone, Tmmgamer here, and today I am bringing you a very special video because this is the first video in hopefully what will turn out to be a very long series of Sunday Talk. Now, for those of you who missed my videos in the week when I explained what Sunday Talk is, I'll just run through it very quickly now. Basically, what it is every week I will talk about a topic that's in current affairs, or was in current affairs not too long ago, and I will talk about topics that you guys recommend to me in the comments. So if you have a good idea for a topic, please don't hesitate to recommend it in the comments, and I'll be sure to give that a go at a future date. But today's topic for conversation is the Luis Suarez, Patrice Evra racism row that started I think on the 15th of October, and it still really hasn't stopped rumbling on. But before I do dive into that, there's just one thing I want to quickly mention. I have no idea what gameplay I'm going to put over this commentary, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to record the commentary naturally, see how it flows, cut the commentary off, and then fit gameplay in to match the commentary length. So I'm sure the gameplay will be decent. I won't put any rubbish gameplay up, but if the gameplay's not quite up to my normal high standards, it's just filler gameplay. I've got some excellent KSG footage up for you this week, including a really good domination game with that, so look forward to that. But guys, if you let me, I'm just going to plunge straight in. Now, for all of you who don't really know what this is, especially like if you live in America and you don't really follow the English Premier League, what this was a big derby match. It was at Anfield. It was between Liverpool and Manchester United, and I think it was about halfway through the second half. Evra and Suarez had obviously had a running battle throughout the game, and it sort of boiled over. And I think it was a corner for Liverpool, and Evra and Suarez were seen very clearly on camera having the most almighty slanging match you can possibly imagine. I mean, insults were flying either side. But apparently what happened during that exchange was that Luis Suarez racially abused Patrice Evra. Now, if you're an American, you don't know, Luis Suarez is originally from Uruguay, so he's of Latin descent, and Patrice Evra is a black Frenchman. So that just puts it into a little bit more context. But apparently what Luis Suarez did was multiply abuse Patrice Evra in racist terms. Sorry, I'll get my words out. And whilst he was doing this, he began to pinch Patrice Evra's arm at the same time as racially abusing him, and that was the allegation. Now, obviously, this is a very serious allegation. I mean, in the 70s and 80s, this sort of stuff would happen all the time in English football, but there's been a massive work rate. I think it's called Let's Kick Racism Out of Football, and loads of campaigns which are doing fantastic work, and they've finally managed to kick the vast majority out of English football. And we've gone about 15-20 years where racism really hasn't been as major an issue as it really did before. But cases like this, and there's another case about former England captain John Terry going on at the same time, which is a little bit worrying as well, but I'm going to stick to the Suarez one. Cases like this, they've become so rare that when they do eventually come round, they cause a massive upsurge in emotions, and that's obviously understandable because it's a very sensitive topic area. But I think Liverpool FC handled this in the worst possible way they could have, because as soon as they really heard that Suarez had been subject to these charges, these racial charges and the allegations, they came out and basically the team wore shirts with Luis Suarez's face on in a warm-up. I think it was either at Wigan or Blackburn, I can't really remember. But for me, and I think for the vast majority of people who commented on this, that was way too far. I mean, one of your players has just been accused of one of the most serious breaches of the FA's rules. I mean, and of just law in general and just common sense. I mean, to racially abuse another human it's unbelievable in this day and age now, because it's pointless, it's wrong in every way. And so for a footballer who's meant to be like a role model and an example to young kids everywhere, when a footballer gets accused of being racist, that's even more potent and powerful than just an ordinary person. And for Liverpool FC to sanction their team wearing Luis Suarez face t-shirts straight after he's just been very seriously accused of this, I think was too far. I mean, if you were at Liverpool FC and you thought that Luis Suarez was innocent, you can give him all the support you want in the back room, but you've got to keep quiet. You've got to release a statement saying, we will contest the charges, we will defend Lewis to the end, we are convinced he's innocent, and leave it at that. By trooping out in these T-shirts, it just looked so insensitive, and it looked like Liverpool weren't even giving the FA any credence. They were just thinking it was like a United slur story instead of a very serious accusation. And for Liverpool to react in that way, I think was very, very low and just so poor. It's so poorly handled. And then it really only got worse for Liverpool from there on in, because there was a massive outcry in the press and in just the football community in general, really, about Liverpool coming out and wearing these T-shirts. I think it's the general consensus was it was a fairly abysmal decision, and it really did annoy the anti-racism groups in football and anti-racism groups in general, because it seemed to the outside world that Liverpool were not even taking the charges seriously and weren't even bothered if Suarez was found guilty, and that was the thing that I think really annoyed everyone. So for Suarez, he was placed in a very, very uncomfortable position, because what he claimed was that although he did admit to calling Patrice Evra racist terminology, what he said was in his native Uruguay, terminology like that is used in a friendly way. It's just like a greeting. So whilst in Europe and especially Britain, terminology like that isn't acceptable and has been unacceptable for a while, he argued that in Uruguay, using a term like that would be fine. And I personally have quite a few things wrong with that. Luis Suarez has not just arrived in Europe. If he'd arrived from Uruguay into Europe this summer and then he'd done that, I would have perhaps a little bit more sympathy for it. But the simple fact is, Luis Suarez has been in England since last January, I think. Last January or last summer, so it's a good 6 months to a year. It's not like he's just arrived off the plane today. And also, before Suarez even got to Britain, he played for Ajax in the Netherlands. Now, I don't know much about the Dutch, but I can guarantee that they're not racially abusing each other as greetings. So for Suarez to claim ignorance and misunderstanding, when you can clearly see him pinching Patrice Evra's arm whilst he's calling him a racist insult, it begged belief, and it just showed again complete lack of sensitivity from Liverpool and the player, and it really snowballed out of hand then. But I think the real kudos in this case goes to the FA, because the FA are just, they're a figure of ridicule and criticism, really. I mean, most of the footballing governing body is. I mean, especially FIFA and the Blatter, most corrupt organisation in the world. They're awful. But the FA has recently been in for a lot of flack. People see it as doing a lot of bad things. But I think in this instance, the FA got it spot on, because they didn't hold the investigation themselves, because they could have been accused of bias if they did that. What they did is they just went out and appointed an independent football law specialist, an advisory committee basically, to make a decision and then come back to the FA with their findings. Now, this regulatory committee found Luis Suarez guilty, and one of the reasons why they found him guilty, which I think was quite important, is his credibility as a witness was brought into consideration, because Patrice Evra seemed very calm, he was relaxed, he gave out his evidence clearly, there were no contradictions, and the report specifically mentioned that Suarez was the complete opposite. He looked shifty, he didn't really answer questions very fully, his story contradicted, it just seemed like, and I know this is a hearsay, but when an independent law regulatory committee says this about a witness's credibility, you've got to take it into account. I mean, I think Suarez is guilty. Suarez himself admitted that he racially abused Patrice Evra, so his own defence is basically shut out the water, because for me, the cultural differences argument doesn't make sense at all, especially not when he's been in Britain for about 8-9 months, and he's been in Holland, the Netherlands, for a good 3 or 4 years. I think he spent at Ajax. So it's not like he's completely new to our culture and to European culture. So for Suarez to use that as a defence, I think was very, very flimsy. And then what really annoyed me even more was, as soon as Luis Suarez got found guilty, Liverpool came out again and said they were very, and this is a quote, surprised and disappointed at the result of the inquiry. Now, when your player has admitted that he had racially abused someone, for a club to say they are surprised that he's been found guilty of racially abusing someone is, it's nigh on unbelievable. And I mean, I know it was basically Luis Suarez's word against Patrice Evra's word, but the fact is, Luis Suarez has admitted he's racially abused someone. And just because he's trying to get out of it by using cultural differences as an argument, doesn't mean it's right. Even if he was completely unaware that that word in this context is completely wrong, I still think he should be punished. And the fact is, he's spent so long in Europe that that argument is completely shut out the water. And another point about how weak his defence was. It doesn't matter if in Uruguay this is a greeting. You said this in a heated argument. Suarez definitely meant it to hurt. Because when you say something in a heated argument, even if you use it as a greeting normally, you don't mean it as a greeting in that argument. You mean it to barb and wound. So Suarez is basically admitting that he racially abused someone, intending to hurt them. And that's just complete guilt. So for Liverpool to come out after that and then say they were surprised and disappointed is really bad. But the person for me who came out of this worst is Kenny Dalglish. Because Kenny Dalglish is just an icon in football, especially British football. He's a living legend. He's done everything, won everything as a player and a manager. He's just a really, really great guy. He's got great integrity. And I feel that his image was besmirched by this. Because after Suarez has been found guilty, he came out and said in a press conference that the press and the public haven't seen the full facts. And when an independent regulatory committee has gone away for weeks and formed a full report and published all of the reports to the public, the press, the FA, everyone, covering every inch. I mean, it was well over 100 pages, this document. So they have not left out a single centimetre of detail. For Kenny Dalglish to come out and cast doubt upon the investigation, I think that's just another really low blow. And the real losers in this are Liverpool FC, because they have come out and basically done the worst action at every turn. They dug themselves into a massive hole with those t-shirts. Because if Suarez had been completely found innocent, they would have got away with that. But wearing those t-shirts after Luis Suarez admitted he has racially abused someone, it was terrible. It was a terrible idea, a terrible thing, and it has really tarnished the club image. And I mean, I'm in Liverpool now. I live in Liverpool. I go to university in Liverpool, and it really seemed to me that the club just got into a bit too much of a siege mentality. I mean, because I have quite a few friends who are Liverpool fans, obviously, and they seem to rally right behind Suarez right at the beginning, obviously inspired by the t-shirts and Dalglish. But as this more and more information came out, they just seemed to get a little bit more uncertain about themselves. And this was the fans. So if the fans are feeling like this, imagine how Kenny Dalglish is feeling. I think what Liverpool did was they came out in full support of their player before they knew all the facts. And that's always a dangerous thing to do. And then when they did that, they obviously made the big mistake of the t-shirts. They compounded it by, I think, backing him too loudly. If they had waited 2 more days, found out the full details, quietly backed Suarez, but stayed fairly stum in the press, I think that would have been much better. But I think what they did is they charged out far too early in full support, and then as they started to get the details in, they realised that it would be a pretty humiliating climb down for them if they suddenly withdrew their support. So they had to stay fully vocal in the press. And I think they just continued to dig themselves a very, very deep hole. And in the end, it really damaged the reputation of the club. But I think that's my opinions on it. I hope you've enjoyed listening to me talk about it. I've certainly enjoyed doing the research and talking about this. So I already have had one topic suggested for me next week, and that is the origins of the universe. So I'm probably going to do that next week. I'd just like to thank, I think it was Dan, WTF Productions. I think he was the first guy who recommended this topic to me in the comments. But if there was another person, I'll find your name and I'll shout you out again next week. So guys, thank you so much for watching and listening. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope the gameplay isn't too bad that I'm going to put up above this video now. But guys, just thanks again for listening to me. Have a fantastic day, and I hope this series will become a cornerstone of my channel well into the future. So, see you soon.
Job complete.